It's time to accelerate. Hey friends, this is Andy. Welcome to episode 602 of Accelerate, the sales podcast of record. Joining me on the show today as my guest is Bill Troy. Bill is the CEO of Civilis Marketing and the author of a new book titled Clicksand, How the Snake Oil Pitchmen of Online Marketing Suck You In and Ruin Your Business. Now, as you can tell from the title of the book, Bill is, he's not messing around. And he's going right after the people that overhype and overpromise and underdeliver in digital marketing. And so we're going to talk about why so much of the digital marketing is overhyped, and sort of like we see these days with so much of these sales hacks that come out that make promises that can't possibly be delivered. Because the fact is, in online marketing, as in sales, there's no replacement for executing the fundamentals, right? For doing the basics right and guaranteeing your success through hard work and execution of your fundamentals. And Bill is also going to make the case why even in an online world, one-to-one selling still has incredible value that too many companies are overlooking. So make sure you stay around. Join us for that. If you'd like to see the summary notes for this episode, go to andypaul.com/602. Now, before we get to the interview, I just want to share a few words about December, because December is right around the corner. And actually, December is my favorite sales month of the year, if you will. Actually, my favorite month for prospecting. Now, I know everyone on social media and the blogosphere wants to offer you advice about how to close the year strong. Everybody's talking about closing orders in December. And, well, you can hardly argue with that sentiment. But the fact is, if you're at the beginning of December and you still haven't hit your number for the year, then you've got bigger problems to deal with. And ones we'll take up at a later time. But for me, December is really for new business development. I mean, look at your pipeline for Q1. I mean, do you have the qualified prospects you need to hit your numbers for January, February, March? I mean, really, January should be taken care of. I mean, if you're at the beginning of December, let's say you've got a 90-day sales cycle, right? From point of initial contact to closing the order. Well, if you're at the beginning of December, do the math. You should have January and February pretty well locked down. But if you don't, if you still need to go out and develop some new prospects, this is the month to do it. And the reason being is that in my decades of selling is December has been the month when the customers are more available. People travel less between Thanksgiving and the end of the year. People stick closer to home. And so as a result, decision makers are more readily available. Stakeholders you have to deal with are more readily available to talk with. And I've had great success moving some of my biggest deals, worth tens of millions of dollars, moving them forward during the month of December because people are just more available. And also, I actually got some of my best jobs in December. And people used to always tell me, oh, that's so bad. You have to, you're trying to find a job at the end of the year. I'm in a couple instances where, I was in transition at this last quarter of the year, earlier in my career. And actually, no, it's just opposite. And December was fantastic because, again, the hiring managers were available. Hiring managers knew what their budgets were going to be for January, February for adding new headcount. So they were looking in this time frame. They were looking in the December time frame. It's really the ideal time to get out there if you're looking for a new gig and make yourself available. So December, to me, great time to jump at new opportunities. Make sure you're doing it both in new business and if you need a job, getting a job. All right, I'm excited to talk with Bill Troy as we talk about Clicksand. Bill, welcome to Accelerate.
I'm ready to push the pedal down.
Hey, whoa, look at that. I love it where people have their comments aligned with the theme of the show.
There you go.
That gets you an invite back. So that's very,
Light
very good.
Speed. Let's do it. Yeah. All right.
Flattering the host is one of the most important criteria for selection of guests. And that, you won right there. Okay.
All right. There I go.
So just have a standard question I ask my guests at the beginning of the show, and that is, in your mind, what's the single biggest challenge facing sales reps today?
As you know, Andy, I come at this from the online marketing side of things. But I think online marketing has affected the way salespeople view their potential clients. And I think
you've clearly been in sales. I read your book.
Yeah, well, true, yes, but I think that what's happened though is
you're trying to rebrand yourself as marketing. See, this is
Well, I think there's actually some overlap these days. I think a lot of times we think about marketing expecting it to bring in sales leads, right? It used to be marketing was about brand awareness or name recognition or something, but I think they really overlap a lot now. And I think in a way that's where I think the challenge comes in, is that the online marketing mindset, let's say, has infected salespeople in a way that's caused them to start thinking of their potential clients in an adversarial way. We look at potential clients that we haven't met yet as someone that should be lured or tricked with a keyword or a email subject line, and that's how the relationship begins. And then even as it starts to evolve, they have to sort of prove themselves by downloading or clicking or giving us some information before we start to give them anything. And that whole sort of mindset, I think, that comes out of the online marketing approach, where you're treating people very anonymously in the beginning, just sets you up for the wrong path from a sales perspective when you want to build a relationship going forward. So I think that just mindset is a challenge for sales in general these days.
Yeah, well, and that's going to lead into our broader discussion for sure.
Yeah,
because you've written a book, which is going to be published, I think, soon after this airs, and I really enjoyed it. First of all, a very clever title. It's called Clicksand, just so people understand. Clicksand, how snake oil pitchmen of online marketing suck you in and ruin your business. Now, first of all, I got to tell you, you got to stop learning to beat around the bush like that.
Yeah, I've got to learn to take a stand on something.
Right, come on, say exactly what you mean. So, yeah, very, very clever title. But the book is really good as well. I mean, and we'll get into sort of some of the big themes, but I think it sort of plays back on what you were just talking about. For me, the major thesis is that what I took away is that the behaviors that we exhibit through the online marketing and selling are not or that we're encouraged to adopt, let's say, typically, don't align and comport with who we are individually and personally, and what we would do if we're selling to someone one-on-one without that influence. And so it's this disconnect that you really talk about that I think is so was fascinating. I'm really glad you wrote the book and brought that up, because it's absolutely true, and we'll dig more into it. But it's sort of what you talked about before is the challenge for reps is that they come out with the attitude that selling is something, and I talk about this in my second book, is selling is not something you do to someone, it's something you do with someone. And we're encouraging people to continue to look at selling as buyers as the object of something we do to them as opposed to something we do with them.
And I think even just in a big picture metaphysical sense, that we're starting without the optimism. Years ago when I was on the road selling a lot, I had optimism every time I went in to visit a prospective client. I was excited and positive and felt like this is going to be the beginning of something great. And I just don't feel like that's there these days. And it's become more, I don't know if it's jaded or just kind of, transactional. And we're just, I think there's just an attitude.
Yeah, well, I think that attitude that sales is a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, there's certainly some companies that adopt that, and certainly not all, but I mean some that, I win, you lose, even though you're getting something supposedly of value. But
right,
we look at the sales process as a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Well, I love that up front in the book you invoke Eisenhower's warning about the upcoming and the rise of the military-industrial complex, and equating that to what's sort of this online digital marketing complex. That has arisen, because in the same sense that Eisenhower was concerned about the military-industrial complex taking on a life of its own and leading us into military action and wars in order to justify their own existence, is we see perhaps something similar happening on the online marketing world.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I wrestled with whether that was an apt analogy, because certainly war is much more, much heavier topic than online marketing. But the idea that the industrial companies that are producing the product, whatever that product is, start to have their own incentive for selling more of it at all cost is really the idea. And I I just want to call that out because I think we've all, considered that possibility in the arms world. We've considered that possibility in the food world. Fast food companies are in the business of selling more and more fast food all the time. And we know that there's extra salt and sugar in there to try to get us to buy more. That isn't always good for us. But I don't think anybody's really ever said this yet about companies like HubSpot or Facebook or Google and say, they're just in the business of selling more of this. And so you have to, as a buyer of it, really start to think about whether it's right for you and not just take their word for it and not just say, well, everybody's doing it, I guess I'll buy more too. You really have to start thinking about whether it's really right for you.
Yeah, be a discriminating consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a shocking notion, right? I mean, seriously, when it comes to social media and so on, I have yet, other than yourself and some pundits that I've read online and so on, so people saying, are we really thinking about how we're using this and why we're using it and to the extent that we're using it? And I'd sort of Facebook, just the revelation about how willingly they were selling ads to Russian cutouts or that they knew
right.
They knew what they were buying these ads for, which is basically to try to disrupt our democratic processes.
Yeah.
And yet has there been a big pushback about it? I mean, look at Uber. What happened, the board was driven to take action because people were taking the app off their phone because people were disgusted by the behaviors that was being reported about.
Right.
Who's taking Facebook off their phone?
Yeah, good point. It's a powerful force and it's hard to go against. But the other thing too is that what I question a lot, and you talked about this, talked about the book, I question a lot the assumptions even built in about what's even good and bad about online marketing. And, one of the things that we all forget is that the reports and dashboards that we're using, if we're doing online marketing, are reports and dashboards that were built by the people who want to sell more of this. So guess what kind of behaviors are encouraged in those reports, right? Sending more messages, posting more ads, trying to get more people to click and more people to open and more people to download. And we don't ever even consider whether those really are the things we should be measuring because, well, there it is. It's a green arrow. It points up. And so those are the kinds of things we've just gotten so comfortable just accepting. Wait a minute. The person that built that has an agenda. So there's a lot of that.
Right. And that speaks to one of the sort of, cautionary tales, if you will, about big data in general, right? Because big data, our use of big data is driven by algorithms.
Yeah.
And the algorithms aren't spontaneously generated by the machines. They're generated by people and written by people that had a point of view.
Right. And a goal. To make money.
Right. And so, there's a book that was written a couple years ago called Weapons of Math Destruction by a woman named Kathy O'Neill. Great book. People should pick it up and read it because it is sort of, and she's not a chicken little, hey, the sky is falling. She's a data scientist. She's worked as a quant on Wall Street. This is her livelihood. But she does invoke this idea that, we involved with these big systems with big data, and we presume that the algorithms are working to the ultimate good. But, they're not. They have biases built into them just because people started them.
Absolutely. And then sometimes it's not even an algorithm. Sometimes it's just, we just figure it's better to get a better open rate on our email. And you have to actually start, in my mind, questioning that at the very beginning to say, is that a good thing? Because if you take that as just a base assumption that you're going to build your business on, then whatever you do to get a better open rate is a good thing. And that's where you start going down the path of starting to trick people. And all of a sudden, wait a minute, maybe the whole premise of that was wrong. And so, it's scary if you don't really question it.
Yeah, well, for me, as one of the takeaways is that, we would indulge in behaviors in online marketing and attempt to engage somebody's interest and build a relationship with them that we would not do if we were doing it face to face.
Oh, yeah, just absolutely not. It's really interesting because if you just completely act differently. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's anonymity. You don't really see the person on the other end. But like I said, I think a lot of it's personal too. I mentioned email open rate a second ago, for example, but let's say you have a 30% open rate on your email. You focus on the 30 and you never focus on the 70% who didn't like it. And even the smaller percentage of that cursed your name out loud when you tricked them into opening something they hated. If you were in person, you'd see that 70% of people didn't like what you were saying, and you would change it right away. But you don't get that negative feedback. You just kind of get whatever the dashboard says. So we're just used to seeing things in person, and we're not used to going without that feedback to tell us we're off track.
Yeah. Well, so tell us a little bit about the snake oil reference, because there might be some people in the audience that aren't familiar with. They might have heard the phrase snake oil salesperson, but maybe not understood exactly what it means.
Sure. So snake oil was a real product invented by a real guy. Clark Stanley was his name, and he showed up at the World's Fair in 1893 in Chicago and set up a booth. Like, we all go to the fair and we see these folks set up a booth, and he set one up. And so there was a rumor from the western part of North America, which when they were building the railroads across the country, that Chinese laborers came in to work on the railroads, and they had a liniment that they rubbed on them that was made from the Chinese water snake, and they claimed that it helped with their sore muscles. And so there was this kind of rumor that maybe some sort of snake liniment would help with sore muscles after a hard day of work. And so Clark decided to capitalize on that rumor and created his own product. He brought a bag of rattlesnakes into the World's Fair and set up a big boiling vat of water, and he would open the bag, cut up a snake and put it in the water and boil it, and all kinds of oils would come to the top, and he would mix up a batch right there on the spot. And people just bought it up, and it was so new and interesting and crazy that they gave it a try. And he built a whole business on this, and there was nothing in that product at all that really had any medicinal value, but it was so dramatically different, and people were so desperate to get a cure for whatever pain they were dealing with. And in those days, you could have arthritis or toothache or something, and it could literally ruin your life because the pain would never go away,
right,
unlike today. So he literally created a business, a multi-million-dollar business with factories in a couple of different states in the East Coast, selling snake oil, until finally the government said, wait a minute, what's in this? And they did a little testing and found that there was no snake oil in it, and they shut him down. But that's where the original snake oil came from. And
not that it would have made a difference if there were snake oil in it. But
well, right. It's ironic. He really just got in trouble for deceptive labeling.
Right.
Yeah, right. So that is a term we use to this day to represent a product that is sold and not really good for the people that are buying it, and just good for the folks who are selling it. And it's a fun story that I thought, this sounds a lot like his presentation at the World Fair sounds a lot like online marketing presentations I go to, where it's a dramatic thing and they're people just buy it up on the spot, and everybody, I'm looking around going, is anybody questioning what he's doing here? I guess not. So yeah.
Well, so let's give some examples. I mean, you talk about in the book is people promising outrageous sales growth. Hey, 10x your business. That's a common one that lots of people use. Grow your subscribers 50% overnight. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah. It's just all, it's all the business version of get rich quick, or, take a pill and lose 20 pounds without having to exercise. It's that same sort of promise of the impossible. And yet we fall for it in this particular case. It happens every single day. And I had a guy call the other day who was in an industrial factory environment. He sold big air processing systems for factories. And I said, well, gosh, that sounds pretty interesting. How big's your typical sale? He said, well, our typical sale is about $1 million. And he said, what I want to do is I want to buy some online ads. I'm like, you do? I'm like, you think that whoever is speccing out, a Honda factory is Googling, hoping to find air processing? Okay. So he said, well, I have about $1,000 a month I want to spend on the ads. And I said, you do? I said, what do you expect to get from that? And he said, well, I need to add 2 more leads a month to our pipeline to get 2 more closes a month. I said, well, hold on. You really think you're going to spend $1,000 in online ads, and you're going to sell $2 million worth of air processing equipment to factories across the country or around the world with that sort of investment? And he did. He thought that. So people are just believing the impossible. There's just no way you just run $1,000 worth of ads and sell $2 million of the product. But we hear these kinds of stories all the time as anecdotes. And it's just like, in Clark Stanley's day, somebody saying, I rubbed this on my elbow and my toothache went away. It's magical, and gets people to buy more. It's just
but we've never really outgrown that, though, right? I mean,
no,
you turn on TV, right? We've
Yeah.
got all these diet ads and diet supplements and so on and so forth that all come with the disclaimer that not FDA approved. approved for this purpose, blah, 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 blah. Yet people, continue to buy from snake oil salespeople. I mean, is it the lure of the quick fix, or is it? I mean, I sometimes wonder in business, though, part of it is, especially in the digital marketing these days, is it sort of like this gentleman? I think he was coming to you because somebody had told him he needs to be doing that.
Yeah.
And he felt like he was suffering sort of the fear of missing out if he wasn't doing it. And so it seems like that's why a lot of people seem to be, to me at least, so susceptible, because everybody thinks they should do it, and they think that it's not learnable for themselves.
Oh, gosh, yeah. So like a third of the book is about all the different ways, all the things that are happening in society and even in our own brains to cause this particular snake oil pitch to actually work really well right now. And I think we're in a transient time in history where 10, 20 years from now, we'll look back at this era and say, remember when everybody just bought this online marketing stuff and just thought it was going to be a magic pill? And we all will be jaded in those days, like we are now about diet pills. I mean, I think they still make money selling diet pills, but generally, most people know, all right, you really can't buy a diet pill and just, lose weight overnight and get a six-pack of abs, with that while you sleep. I think we're going to start to feel that way. And I feel like I'm just on the cutting edge of trying to call that out, probably like someone did about diet pills, 50 years ago, or snake oil 100 years ago. And there are just a lot of things happening right now where business owners are, like you said, FOMO is one of those, fear of missing out. They feel like everyone is doing it. If they don't, they're going to be left behind. They're being told that. This is the new wave. And if you don't get on board, you're going to be left, in the dust of history. And they also see their competitors doing it. And they see that some companies are making a lot of money. Certainly Facebook and Google are making lots of money online. So it seems like online is good for stuff. So there are a lot of things that are happening that are kind of, I think, helping this pitch along in a way that won't always happen. And I'm just trying to call those things out and say, look, we got to put this back where it really goes and say it can work for some things, but it isn't a cure for everything.
Well, and just so, again, to reiterate for listeners, maybe those that didn't hear the introduction, is this is the business you're in.
Yes. And I just saw, it's funny because I just was witnessing this so many times. We would sit down with potential clients and they would tell us what they were doing. And I'd just say, oh my God, I can't believe, well, A, I wouldn't say this to them, but I couldn't believe they fell for it. And B, I just started getting so mad that so many of my peers in the marketing world were selling these kinds of things, because I know you and I both know that even though I did not sell that guy $1,000 worth of AdWords and tell him he's going to get $2 million, someone else did. And I'm sure he's spending his $1,000 right now on AdWords, and he's not getting those leads, but someone sold it to him. And so I just finally said, okay, someone's got to stand up and say, this just isn't right. And you just can't believe all these pitches you're getting. And just call it out. Yeah.
Well, and you cite one of my favorite examples about if you're in a presentation with a marketing agency or you're in a public event and there's somebody doing a sales pitch from the stage, and they say, I've got so much to present, I just don't have time to cover it all, so I'm going to go real fast. and I just started laughing because that's not relegated to pitchmen for online marketing products. I mean, sales reps do this all the time too. It's like, I've got so much to cover.
Late night TV pitchmen, right? But wait, there's more. It's the same sort of energy.
Well, okay, so let's take that example. But wait, there's more. I mean, there's books and books and books and websites dedicated to sales letters that basically are based on that whole technique. Yeah,
it's a technique that can work, but I think you just have to look at, there are lots of techniques that work, certainly, right? Billboards work and sales letters work. And, but it's a matter of not just what's happening, I think, with online marketing is that people are starting with the tool. We need to be online. We need to get some AdWords. And then they're justifying it. They're finding someone to sell it to them and they're justifying why they need to do it. It's like starting with the tool before you start and know what your project is going to be. I need a hammer. I got to do some of that hammer stuff. And so then you start going around looking for nails to hit, and that's what happens with online marketing. If you go through an analysis of your business, and your business is driven by traffic and driven by transactions that are more anonymous and less personal and less intimate and all those sorts of things, then it may turn out that this is the way to go. And online marketing is appropriate for some businesses. But the problem I have is that online marketers will tell you it's appropriate for every business. And no matter who you talk to somebody you talk to LinkedIn, or you talk to someone who's an SEO expert, they will all tell you they have an answer for your business. They all say it works for everyone. And that's the problem. It doesn't. And I don't know if you notice this, one of the anecdotes I talk about in the book, and this is the ultimate one for me, is that there are a lot of online marketing folks out there who believe it passionately, and they've kind of drunk the Kool-Aid, and they really do believe it works, and they're really trying to help people, even though they may not be. They're still, good-hearted. But there are a lot of folks in the industry who absolutely know better. And the proof of that, as I talk about in the book, is that most people buy online marketing from someone in person. So online marketers know that they can't even sell online marketing with online marketing. They have to go to networking groups and those in-person presentations we just talked about, and they sell it one-to-one, person-to-person. And because they know relationships are how you sell stuff, yet they go and tell the company that buys it from them, you don't need a relationship, you just need the right keyword. And so that's the thing for me, is they know better.
Yeah, well, and right. And you talk about this disconnect that happens between you have your funnel, which is, scripted. You have your sequence. Let's say your autoresponder sequence that you put together of, 5 emails are going to go once somebody enters your funnel. And you compare it, interestingly, to a situation that happens in sales all the time, which is that in one of your responses, you ask a question, but the question's set up in such a way to really respond to a specific answer, right?
Right.
And what if you don't get that answer?
Yeah.
Then the rest of your sequence doesn't really make sense. When we see this in sales these days, as more and more companies sort of rush into doing inside sales, a lot of times, especially in the newer cases, is their reps are really heavily scripted, and they're going to ask the 3 to 5 questions on the list, come hell or high water, irrespective of what the customer says.
Right. Yeah, we get those all the time. I mean, I say, "Oh, no, thanks, I'm not interested." Well, but would you like it if I could save you 20% on? Yeah, no, still not interested. But at least there's a person there doing that one. Much less when I get an email. I just, and this happens to us all every day. But I just literally last week had a coffee with a sales consultant. I mean, this is someone that teaches people to sell, and he works for a large national company that you and I would know, and everybody would know if I mentioned it. And we had coffee. We talked about how he was growing his business, and he shared a lot of the same views I did on things. And literally the next day, I got an email from him that was obviously an automated email from some drip marketing campaign he has, asking me if I'd like to have coffee for 15 minutes and talk about my business. It's like, are you kidding me? This is a sales consultant.
Right.
So it's just crazy what people have been talked into. And he doesn't obviously know, or he isn't paying attention, or I don't even know what happens.
What his sequence says. I mean, that's right. The crime, right?
Yeah, so that's why, I'm writing a book, which is I got to start slapping people. Wake up! Look at what you're even doing here. So it's crazy.
Well, and your book sort of accomplishes that. So you make the case for what not to do. So then, what should people be doing?
Well, so what you need to do is, and it's different for every business, so there's not one, unfortunately, unlike, online marketing, there isn't one snappy answer for everyone, except that what I would say is you need to build your marketing and sales process around what your prospect needs in order to buy from you. And where we, so at Civilis Marketing, which is the company that I run, where I wrote the book, where we focus is where those relationships are necessary to get a deal done, especially when there's a relationship that needs to exist before there's potential for a sale. I think this is a big disconnect in the sales world, is that a lot of companies have selling processes. They know how to ask the right questions to get the client's needs discovered, and then they can make a proposal or an assessment or whatever. But they don't have a process for working with people that aren't ready to buy now. And so we help them start thinking about what is the process for the relationship that has to exist before the sale is potentially possible. And so you might need to be establishing trust. They might need to know that you're going to be here and you're trustworthy before they would ever even consider letting you try to sell them something. So that's really what I think you need to do, is figure out what has to happen for your buyer, and then make sure you're accomplishing those things. And it may be that that's a lot of times where the online marketing, or even just selling doesn't really work. So that's universal for every company, is understanding the life of their buyer.
Well, and I think also you get into is that one of the reasons we use online marketing is it's a way to do sort of one-to-many communications. But the fact is that to make it work, it still has to be a one-to-one model.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That person on the other end is a human being and have their own needs. And the more their needs are different from the other people that are buying from you, if everyone has the same need, if we're all wanting to go have a hamburger, okay, well, maybe the same message works for all of us. But if you start to have very particular needs for each buyer, and so that's when you have a longer selling cycle, a much bigger sale, where the buyers take a bigger risk.
Yeah, more complex.
Yeah, right, more complex. Yeah, right. A strategic selling type of situation, then you can't do that. You can't do least common denominator stuff. It just won't succeed. In fact, that's the whole premise of the book, is that it not only will it not succeed, it'll actually damage your business because you'll blow those people off versus doing nothing that's neutral.
Right. So, but we have broad swaths of of companies in certain industries, specifically industries that rely a lot on inside sales, certain parts of the tech business, and so on, software as a service, that are really relying on a lot of these techniques that you talk about in terms of generating initial interest to try to generate a conversation that starts that one-on-one relationship. And it's not really working. I mean, you do it enough, and it's like any of these behaviors. You do it enough, there's always a certain success rate, right? But arguably, and more people are talking about this, is that success rate is really low compared to what it could be.
Oh, absolutely. And I think a lot of times the success rate is also sort of tweaked to make it look better. I mean, what we find is you get a lot of leads, but they're not exactly the kind of leads you wish you had. I just met with another business owner the other day who was talking. I said, well, we stratify your customers. He's got, small rabbit customers. He's got some mid-sized gazelle customers and large elephants. And I said, what do you want? He said, well, I really want the larger ones, but I'm thinking if we just do this online thing, we get a lot of rabbits. So what I see a lot of times is that businesses start to actually change their business model to try to fit what they can get through that pipeline. And so they start going after smaller businesses, trying to make it up in volume. And it's just kind of it's just a path that doesn't really work. Even if you get them, they're not really, it's not really what you need to do.
No, it doesn't end well. I mean, especially if they're always servicing large accounts, basic business logic would say, if we're doing this successfully and we're probably making more money on this, why don't we do more of this as opposed to, it may be hard, but let's do the hard stuff.
I think, too, another good, rule of thumb is to think about how much you want the client to invest in you and make sure you're investing that or more in them. If you're wanting them to make some sort of change that's a multi-year change, a long-term relationship change, something that's risking their career if it goes wrong, I mean, that's a big decision for them to make, whether that's software or factory automation equipment or, whatever, insurance, whatever it is. And if you're wanting them to take that sort of risk and invest that much in you, you have to invest that much in them as well. And I think that's the issue, is that we're not thinking about it that way. We're thinking, I get it. It's got an email newsletter last week, and I was joking about it, where they talked about how, they treat every customer special and unique, and you're not just a number to us. Yet it was an email that went to several thousand people.
Yeah.
So they weren't actually doing it.
Right. So I think the key, and you talk about it, but it's still the hard part, because this is not what many people in the online marketing space talk about. Is that it still boils down, especially if you're in B2B, relatively complex product sale. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, it still boils down to a person talking to a person.
Absolutely.
And so your online marketing is all about putting yourself into the position of having that conversation.
Yeah.
And once you have that opportunity, is doing the things that I teach people and I talk about on this show is how do you optimize the value you can deliver in that moment? Because then that will guarantee you get another moment to optimize value in. And it's if this reliance on online marketing, distances us from the customers, and that's not the key to selling more of a business product. Maybe on a transactional that may work, but on a business product, and I just you had a good quote toward the end of the book. You said on one hand we are. A quote, we were connected with more people than ever before thanks to the power of computers and online networks. And at the same time, however, those computers and networks keep us physically isolated from the people we're interacting with.
Yeah.
And that sums up the problem. We need to use these tools to overcome that isolation, to put us more frequently into the position where we have a person talking to a person. And if we're not doing that, then yeah, we're not using these the right way.
I think too, you can even just think about what you, in simple terms, a couple of things. You can think about what you say to people in person and say, could I model that online? I mean, what do you say to someone when you see them at a conference, or, could that be what you sent to them in an email? Why do you send the sort of boilerplate, my company provides top novels, several services, blah, 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 but you would never say that in person. So why is your first contact by email going to be different?
That's what you think. I mean, the problem is,
well, yeah, I mean, I guess on a telephone, maybe if it's a cold call, they're saying that sort of stuff, but certainly not walking up to someone and I don't know, maybe. But I think just trying to think about how you act with another human being is a starting point, And the other one I tell people too is just start watching and seeing what you like. So we're all going to get 500 messages in our inbox today, and we're going to like 5 of them, right? And we're going to respond to, 20, but 5 will really like chuckle and respond back and say something. And think about what those were like. What was it? How was it communicated to you? And start thinking if you could do that with someone else. One of the arguments we get all the time about online marketing is that, it's more efficient, it's cost effective. And then we see somebody spending $20,000 a month on something and getting no business out of it and said, well, what if you just turned that around and started putting all those resources into sending something nice to someone and getting to know somebody better and, treating people right? It's not like you don't have any money to spend. It's that you're just forgetting what you're trying to accomplish with it. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. Well, Bill, unfortunately, we've run out of time, but great conversation. So tell folks how they can find out more about you, when your book's going to be available, and so on.
Right. The official release date, I just got it, is February 20th. So it'll be available on that day on Amazon. You can pre-order it now, but I put together a page right now for folks to go to immediately that are intrigued by what we've been talking about. At the website for the book is Clicksand. clicksand.net/accelerate. And we've got a little page there. And what I did was I put up chapter 5, which is the chapter that goes through in detail all the ways that the online marketing can damage your business. Because I think a lot of that is really eye-opening for people to see, oh gosh, I didn't even think about the fact that it's doing that to me, right?
Right.
So that's up there. Just go ahead and download it. And you don't have to put your email address in. I'm not going to put you on some email list. I just want people to get the chapter. And if they like it, great, we can talk more. And there's a discount code there. You can sign up to get a discount when the book is released. And then if this resonates with anyone and they want to talk more, they can schedule a call with me. So that's
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Bill, thank you. And friends, thank you as always for joining me today. Make sure you come back for the next great episode of Accelerate. Until then, if you get a chance, go to iTunes, subscribe to this podcast, and leave us a review. We'd really appreciate that as well. So thanks again for joining me. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.